Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. First of all, I'd just like to tell everybody this one is called America's Return to Work. And thank you to the National Governors Association. I should introduce myself. I'm Governor Bryan of the Virgin Islands. I packed a lot of sun, but Delta lost my luggage. I also want to thank my fellow governor and co-chair, NGA's Community Renewal Task Force, Governor Mike Parson of Missouri. Unfortunately, he is not able to join us today, so we have the pleasure of working with Governor Ducey here today. He's a good replacement. And finally, we've been doing a lot of work on this Community Renewal Task Force, and it provides an essential vehicle that us governors use to talk about in front of Congress and advocate for education, workforce, broadband, nutrition, and public safety issues. And it's never been more relevant, I think, than at this time. Each of those issues that I mentioned, we could talk all weekend about it, right? But today, given the urgent need to deal with job shortages and consumer demand, we felt it was critical to focus on getting America back to work. And when we talk about getting America back to work, we just don't mean regular jobs. I mean, we want to make sure that they are worthwhile jobs. And it's even more difficult now to get people into dead-end jobs because all the benefits and stuff that we have distributed in the last 2 years has definitely demotivated a sector of our workforce. That's part of the story. I think the other part of the story is people have just found that life is short and you never know what can happen if they've been enjoying a higher quality of life with their family and doing things that they always wanted to do. But we also want to make sure when we get these jobs that they're good paying jobs. And that means employees have opportunities to not only make money, but to grow within their organizations. It also means that they have access to affordable health care, child care, because those things are more important than ever. And it means that those places are equitable and provide opportunity for all workers, regardless of race, gender, or any other thing. That is why I'm so pleased to have with us today an exceptional panel of participants who can touch on each of these critical priorities and share best practices on how they are making a difference in getting this workforce stronger than ever in the post-COVID. I'm specifically looking forward today to learning from today's participants about how we can improve work-based learning and skill development to renew our communities and ensure the jobs of tomorrow. I'm especially interested in hearing from our participants about striving to make your organizations and the broader workforce more equitable for all workers, especially those who have been most impacted by the pandemic. Women, especially working moms with children, those are people who have color, and making sure that those are okay. You know, I come from a very small place, but it is an essential, a microcosm and a slice of America where you see things happen at very, very quick pace. And through the pandemic, we have mirrored all of the issues that we saw on the mainland. And it's almost like an approaching snowstorm that you see. So if it's happening in New York, give it 2 weeks, it'll be happening in St. Thomas. And doing that, I think we all have some lessons that we've learned along the way. And we're all suffering right now from just motivating our people to get back involved and get back to making America the kind of place we want to be with workers, good health care, and child care. So what I want to do now is give Governor Ducey of Arizona a chance to introduce himself to you and talk about what he's learned along this trip. Governor Ducey.
Thank you, Governor Bryan, and thank you for having me co-moderate the panel with you. I'm looking forward to it, and I want to say thank you as well to the National Governors Association and everyone who has made this event possible. I also want to thank and welcome all our participants that we have today for sharing their expertise with us. It's great to see everyone here in the room as well. Well, the American workforce certainly looks a lot different today than we last met at this time 2 years ago. Back then, the national unemployment rate was just 3.5%, a 50-year low, and the economy was booming. And we all know what came next. The unemployment rate reached 14.7%. Thousands of businesses closed, and our economy went into a tailspin. Thankfully, our workforce is starting to return to normal. In Arizona, we've officially recovered all the jobs since the start of the pandemic. Any job that was lost, we've recovered and more, and our unemployment rate is the lowest it's been since before the Great Recession. But every state is unique, and not everyone has seen that level of recovery. Across the country, we have over 10 million job openings that need to be filled, despite the fact that there are only 6 million people officially counted as unemployed. Clearly, there's a demand for workers that is not being met. That is happening while we see the number of people quitting their jobs at an all-time high, with 4.5 million resignations in the month of November alone. So I'm hopeful on this panel that we can talk about why this demand for workers is not being met, what businesses can do to better retain workers, and what we as governors can do to help businesses find talent and ensure workers are equipped to fill these vacancies. In Arizona, for example, we've excelled at connecting government, industry, and academia to enhance our workforce. To start, we reduced regulations and cut taxes to attract more businesses to our state. And then, once we had more jobs to fill, we developed partnerships to create talent pipelines and ensure Arizonans have the skills needed for these new, exciting, innovative positions. This approach, of course, can be replicated in all states and territories. Meanwhile, as businesses struggle to find and retain workers, consumers are paying more for goods and services. This is the highest cost of daily life that we've seen in this country in nearly 40 years. It's great that wages have increased nationwide by more than 4 percentage points since 2021, but when inflation skyrockets by 7 percentage points, it wipes out the entire wage gain and then some. I'm interested to learn from today's participant about where you see inflation going this year and how you see that impacting our ability to get Americans back to work. My hope is that we can discuss how to bring Americans who are no longer in the workforce back into the fold, and I think that's very important as well. Some of the actions, I imagine, with the best of intentions from the federal government to stretch and strengthen our social safety net, paid people long past time in the pandemic to stay home. Some made decisions to self-medicate and are suffering mental health issues, and I think they need to get back in the workforce once we're able to give them that assistance. Once again, thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Governor Bryan of the U.S. Virgin Islands, who's going to introduce us to today's august panel.
Thank you, Governor Ducey. The other thing I forgot to mention is that I'm a former labor commissioner, so this is right up my alley. I did 8 years in the Department of Labor, and it's so weird now. We actually predicted back in 2008, 2009 that we would have this massive loss of workforce and loss of skill in 2020. We never thought it would happen through a pandemic. I don't know, maybe somebody had some kind of looking glass to see that. But I'm proud today to introduce to you, first of all, Dr. Mardy Leathers, who serves as the Director of the Missouri Office of Workforce Development, a position he's held since 2017. In his capacity, he also serves as Executive Director to Missouri State Workforce Development Board, Director of Apprenticeship for Missouri, and oversees Missouri's Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act programs. Since his appointment, Dr. Leathers has served as an integral role in transforming Missouri's public workforce development system, expanding and modernizing apprenticeship and work-based learning. In addition to leading these initiatives, Dr. Leathers and Missouri's Office of Workforce Development were one of 10 states that partnered with NGA Workforce Innovation Networking in spring 2021 to improve coordinated service delivery for job seekers, with the goal of improving Missouri's ability to connect job seekers to education, work, or training opportunities that align with the state and workforce economic recovery goals. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Leathers.
Thank you, Governor Bryan. Thank you, Governor Ducey. Governors, thank you for joining us today.
Next, no applause? Yeah. They're not getting paid for this. They're doing this for free. You got to give them a little encouragement to come next year. Next, I would like to introduce Kristen Titus, the Executive Director of Cognizant Foundation. As Executive Director, Ms. Titus leads the Cognizant Foundation's effort to support organizations in developing, educating, and training the workforce of today and tomorrow. Since the foundation's launch in 2018, Ms. Titus and her team at Cognizant have already awarded over $50 million to support critical initiatives to diversify the upskill and tech talent pipeline, while also being a key partner in the NGA Workforce Innovation Network, which is now focused on advancing digital skill development with its current cohort of states. Ms. Titus, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for the work you are doing to advance digital and technological skills for the people of all types and backgrounds.
Thank you.
We also have with us today Ms. Leanne Gassaway, who serves as the Vice President of State Government Affairs at CVS Health. Ms. Gassaway is filling in today for her colleague, Dr. Alan Lotvin, who is Executive Vice President at CVS. Dr. Lotvin unfortunately was forced to cancel his travel plans at the last minute, but I know we are in good hands with Ms. Gassaway. In this capacity, she's no stranger to the occasional public testimony in front of state and federal legislative bodies. I know how that feels. With that said, I give you my word that this will not be a public grilling. Ms. Gassaway. Our last participant is Rachel Romer Carlson, the co-founder and CEO of Guild Education. Ms. Carson's work with Guild Education is centered on partnering with colleges and post-secondary programs to help companies provide employees with cost-effective education benefits. In doing so, Guild seeks to unlock economic opportunity and rethink the traditional models of providing education and workforce training to today's workers. I'm really excited about what you have to say. Welcome.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do, we're going to get each of them a little 5 minutes in order to make a presentation, and then we'll have a question and answer session following that. So that'll last about 20 minutes. So Dr. Mardy Leathers, if you notice, I was rushing to get to the juicy part because I really want to have the discussion. Dr. Mardy Leathers, you're on the floor.
Thank you, Governor. It's an honor and privilege to be here today and talk about what we are doing in Missouri. Governor Parson, sends his regrets for not being able to make it. We have a few things going on back home, and so I have the privilege of being here today to talk about Missouri. Missouri has focused really from day one under Governor Parson's administration to prioritize workforce development and infrastructure. And that was before it was cool. That was before the pandemic. That was before we had this generational investment into infrastructure and jobs and training and those sort of programs. So in Missouri, we've been focused on how do we help more Missourians do two things. And really we have, if you follow kind of some core logic, it's about that, that commander's intent. What is it we're supposed to do every day? And everything else falls under that. And for us, it's about two things. Are we helping Missourians access work? And are we helping Missourians stay in work? And so we ask our question, and we use that litmus test on everything that we do. And if the answer is no, I don't know, or maybe, we don't do it. And so we try to simplify our process based on prioritizing everything we do to ensure that across the governor's entire cabinet, all 16 state agencies, but of course primarily in our agency, the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development, but working on ensuring Missourians have access to work and they have the opportunity to stay in work. As we continue to work through these things, we've had a number of priorities. Before the pandemic, we started an initiative called Best in Midwest. And quick plug, bestinmidwest.com is a great website to see Missouri's journey, and it goes all the way back to 2018 when we launched this, and it's a living website where we update any of our large initiatives. But what we looked at is we said, okay, we're in the heart of the country. We're in the middle of the United States and the Midwest. And so we benchmarked ourselves against our 13 peers. So Minnesota to Arkansas, Nebraska to Ohio, we looked at how is Missouri doing as it relates to things like economic development, workforce development, educational attainment at the K-12 and the post-secondary levels. And the answer was not good. And so the idea was, are we okay with that? Are we satisfied with being 13 out of 14, 14 out of 14, which equated to anywhere between 39 and 50 out of 50 at the national level? And in Missouri, we realized that we weren't. But we hadn't really looked at that, right? We hadn't had the gut check moment to say, our systems are broken, they need to be modernized, and we need to fix this. So we began that journey, and we began looking at a number of things. A lot of details of things we looked at, but part of it was looking at everything from aligning our multiple state agencies to ensure that we're citizen focused and that we're citizen aligned, but then working together also to break down our own silos, because sometimes Department of Natural Resources doesn't really think about talking to the Department of Energy or Department of Workforce Development, but yet there's any economic development project or workforce development project, you have to deal with all of those things. So breaking down those silos, breaking up those turf battles that we have internally to better serve our citizens to try to put Missouri on the map. That was step one. This is not sexy work. It's a lot of infrastructure work because we had to go in and redesign the sewer system, right? We had to go in and redesign the piping, and this, it doesn't create tangible outcomes sometimes. And so our governor was very brave to say, you know what, we're gonna do a lot of stuff to clean our own house up. That's not actually something that usually citizens can feel, touch, or see, but hopefully the outcome is Missouri will be stronger and Missouri will be more efficient. Fast forward to the pandemic, happened in the middle of this. We never thought that would happen, but it did. And so in Missouri, we went from 3.4% unemployment to rapidly 6.7% unemployment. About 800,000 Missourians, a 6 million population, accessed overnight UI benefits, and we had to process them through our systems. To kind of put that in context, the first week of March of 2020, we had about 23,000 people in Missouri accessing UI benefits. By the first week of April, we were at 887,000. So quickly overnight having to shift and pivot. But the great thing is that now we've restaffed, we'd like to say restaffed, all but 38,000 of the jobs that we lost in the pandemic. We're at 3.3% unemployment, and our labor force participation rate continues to rise. We're laser focused on what's called Return Strong, or helping Missourians skill up and get back to work, right? That's kind of the brand that we've used to say, we want to invest in our citizens, we want to ensure that we move any systemic barriers out of the way, whether it's our own bureaucracy, or if it's things that are preventing individuals, whether it's transportation, childcare, affordability to work, all of these things that can help us work together. So in Missouri, we've been able to do a couple things. I'm proud that we participated in the NGA Workforce Innovation Network. I was telling Ms. Titus that for us, it really was transformational. I know that we like to throw that word around, but as we were recovering from the pandemic, this came along at a really key time because it wasn't about the $100,000 or even the NGA's assistance, because honestly, we had that anyway, right? We had plenty of resources, and we were talking to NASWA and NGA and our groups on a weekly basis. But this allowed us to kind of pull ourselves out from the firefighting mode and begin to think about actually moving forward with recovery and building that map out to say, what should the workforce look like in 2024, 2028, and 2030? And so we just got our big report card with the census report, and we can understand and use that information to tell us, okay, are we happy with where we ended up from 2010 to 20, and do we like the trajectory that puts us on for 2030? And the answer, of course, is no. So we're working to look at how we improve access to services, how we align our funding to ensure that citizens actually can be rewarded, and we're prioritizing work first and then learning, right? We understand that learning is, while it may not be linear, it is continuous. And so we want to help individuals access work and then invest in sending them back to school, completing that degree, getting that industry recognized credential. And we'll talk more about that later. But again, thank you. It's an honor to talk about some of the work we've done under Governor Parsons' leadership in Missouri.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And I want to point out that in addition to our subject matter experts that we have at the table, we have 4 governors that really represent all different regions of the United States. In addition to Governor Bryan and I want to thank Governor Evers, who is here from Wisconsin, Governor Gianforte, who is here from Montana, Governor Laura Kelly, who's here from Kansas, and Governor Tom Wolf, who's here from Pennsylvania. Once we get into the Q&A and discussion, they're going to chime in as we have a robust overview of what's going on across the country. Governor Bryan?
Kristen?
Yes, thank you, governors. As you heard in the introduction, I'm Kristen Titus. I head up the Cognizant Foundation, and Cognizant, for those of you who don't know, is a Fortune 200 company based in the New York, New Jersey area. We have nearly 40,000 employees across the United States, over 300,000 globally. And we, as a company, in 2018 invested an initial $100 million, all focused on how we prepare communities for the jobs of today and tomorrow. And I want to talk a little bit about that because over the last 3 years, with $60 million of investments, this has really allowed us to focus on 3 things. And I share this strategy because I think it may be helpful. I also share it because I finally, for really the first time, I'm beginning to see some of this language on the panel this morning, some of the same strategy deployed state by state by state. We focus on 3 things. The first is pipelines. None of us can get an equitable workforce that ensures economic mobility for all unless we focus on K-12, and we are squarely focused on expanding computer science in K-12 schools across the country and have a portfolio of investments to do just that. Second, after building pipelines, pathways, how do we create new and strengthen existing pathways into largely technology jobs? As we know and have talked about all morning, technology jobs are among the fastest growing, highest paying, and really baseline skills necessary for any individual to land a job today, and certainly an absolute necessity for economic mobility for communities across the country. As we build those pathways, those include individuals who do not have a 2- and 4-year degree. That includes individuals who have not studied computer science before. How do we create and how do we scale pathways into technology jobs so that we can funnel communities at scale into these great jobs? And then third, and perhaps most importantly, none of those solutions, none of that $60 million will do a thing if we do not drive systems change. So our third pillar is systems change. It's why we're here. It's why we've invested in NGA. What this means is, how do we remove barriers? How do we align with policy, with funds like WIOA, SNAP ENT? How do we really unlock funds and realign a workforce system so that it can deliver people into technology jobs? Workforce system was not designed to do that. And I am a former, I came to this role, I should have said, from a governor's office, spending 3 years driving these policies forward, and have an intimate and very sympathetic view of what it takes to do this state by state by state. I also know deeply how much of this is done at the state level. And if we don't get this right at the state level, if we don't support states in doing that, we will not be successful. And that is why we invested this last year in the creation of NGA's Workforce Innovation Network, where we've awarded 15 states to date. As Mardy mentioned, our star here, 15 states, all of whom taken on huge bodies of work, all focused on how we ensure a post-COVID recovery gets Americans back to work, gets our communities back to work, and does so in an equitable way. We can talk about what some of those successes look like state by state by state, but let's simply say that states, your teams, cross-functional teams, how many agencies are needed to do this, really need both time, incentives, and money to do this. And that's what we hope to bring with the Workforce Innovation Network. Arizona's been a great partner, Missouri, really great proof points of what can happen with a little bit of support. And then finally, I think what I'll note is that work continues. Our work continues. We are not done. We've just launched the second round of the Workforce Innovation Network grants. We've brought in Walmart, Microsoft, Intel, BRT. We've got all partners on board, really focused this time on digital skills, as we talked about all morning. How do we help states catch up, rewrite, and realign with what we know the jobs are, what we know jobs will require coming out of COVID? And then finally, I'll leave us on an uplifting point. I really do believe, I think we all believe, that coming out of COVID, we have a really, really rare opportunity to say each of our communities, each of our states have equitable opportunity for these jobs, absolute equitable opportunity. Work is remote, work is democratized, and we now have a real opportunity to equip all communities with these skills and directly place them into jobs, again, among the fastest paying, highest paying jobs. And this is not about winning HQ2 for Amazon. In fact, I know many states are dusting off those proposals because that is relevant here. But really, as we come out of this, how do we help states thrive? How do we help communities and individuals across those communities, no matter the zip code, land these great jobs and ensure economic mobility for their families and ensure those communities thrive? So thank you, and love to get into it in the Q&A.
Thank you. And also joining us in the interim from the great state of Colorado is Jared Polis. Welcome, Governor.
Hi, Governor. Leanne, you're up.
Thank you, governors, and thank you for having us today. It's my absolute honor and pleasure to be here today to talk about this. We could probably do not only the whole weekend, we could probably do 2 weekends on the healthcare workforce and what we're going to need to do for the future of that. But I will try to do it in 5 minutes as much as I can. I will say at CVS Health, we're very proud of the responses that we have been able to do during crisis, whether it's earthquakes, blizzards, tornadoes, floods. We have an entire infrastructure in our company that has to immediately turn on to respond to those episodes. And we took a almost similar approach when the pandemic started. And it follows a long history of us being ready to respond to a community's needs. When everything happened, I'm gonna do a little bit of rewind. And it's funny, Dr. Leathers, what you said. Our focus has always been how do we get people to work and how do we keep them at work? And I'm proud to say at CVS Health, we didn't close a store through the entire pandemic. We kept people at work, and we not only did our own, but we tried to keep other people at work. Our distribution centers, our insurance company, our pharmacy services, and then other employers who came to us and said, help us stay at work. How do we keep our workers there? How do we train them to work remotely? And we tried to assist in all of those as well. We really took a dual focus. One was on our own employees. We had to learn, like, how do we keep our own workers at work and serving the communities that they are serving every single day and the customers they're serving. We had to scramble like everybody else did to look for PPE and enhanced benefits for frontline workers, did bonuses, made sure that everybody had the equipment they needed. And I will say we increased wages to $15 an hour to keep people at work and to stay at work. We had to hire 45,000 people over the last 18 months to meet the demand of our workforce. We did that all through virtual hiring. Talk about a new skill set. We had to train our own people how to virtually hire and then process those folks through a virtual setting so they could show up for work, whether that be in their own home or whether that be at a distribution center or whether that be in actually one of our stores. Then we focused on our communities and our customers. Over the last 2 years, we have done 41 million COVID tests on Americans to ensure that they could be tested to be safely at work. Thank you. And we continue to do that today, as you know, and we are trying to get over-the-counter tests as quickly as possible to every single one of you. But we're scrambling, too, to get those out as fast as we can. Once the vaccines, and it is quite amazing when I look back, if you think December 15th, the first vaccine was approved. That's just barely a year ago, and we have delivered 51 million vaccines to Americans to get them safely back to work and to keep them at work in a safe environment. We were a little uniquely positioned with almost 10,000 footprints across the United States and all 50 states to do that. It's something we're extraordinarily proud. I will tell you, and I will ask and plead with all of you, anytime you walk into a pharmacy, whether it's a CVS or another one, thank those folks. Thank them for what they have done for the last 2 years on the front line every day. I do that with my own team when I walk into a CVS because, I can't go to Walgreens or Rite Aid. I have to go to CVS. And I just say thank you for everything that you do. I know it's hard. I know you're dealing with a public that is fatigued. They don't want to wear a mask. They don't want to wait in line. Thank you every day for showing up at work. It is a huge commitment that they've made to the public, and it's something we're incredibly proud of. The other thing that I want to talk about is how we had to change the way that we had to do our work. We knew that during the pandemic, people did not want to come into a store. So how did we go to them? And this is something that every business is going to have to face, is how do we go to the customer if they cannot come to us, whether they're immobile or they have transportation needs, or whether they have a sickness that prevents them from coming in and utilizing your services. How do you go to them? And we have increased our home delivery and mail services tenfold in the last 2 years because we needed to get drugs to people who were unable to come in because they have a precondition that made it unsafe potentially for them to come into the pharmacy at the time. So we created an entire way to get the drugs to them in their own home safely and effectively, including home infusion, having actually a nurse go into the home to deliver home infusion treatment so that they didn't have to go to a hospital or a clinic, that the hospitals, as you know, are very full, and it was a safer and less infectious environment for us to go to them. And so we had to rework our entire healthcare workforce and treat and move them into the home away from the brick and mortar pharmacy. And then we said, okay, how do we think creatively for all of our other customers who are coming to us saying, how do I get my workforce back to work? I'm not in healthcare. I am Delta Airlines, and I am still flying people who need to get from wherever they go to wherever they go. And we partnered with Delta Airlines and put a vaccine clinic in Atlanta Airport for their employees so they could come in and get vaccinated and tested so they could fly safely and continue to serve the public every day. We did the same with IHG hotels such as Holiday Inn or Kimpton, where we created environments where they could do hybrid or in-person conferences to allow people to continue to do the important work like we're doing here today. We had to figure out, how do we do that? How do we go to them? And we had an entire workforce that we hired to go to them and do the work that needed to be done there. I am proud to say we also vaccinated the Arizona Diamondbacks during spring training so that we could keep baseball going as well.
It
Just a little
affected
bit
their
for us.
season quite a bit.
Did you do the Rockies too? Did you do the Rockies down in Scottsdale too, or did you leave them out?
If they were there, we vaccinated
They
them.
were there. They were there.
So we tried to keep baseball going as well. And then even the cruise lines, we know that our cruise industry has been hugely impacted by all of this. We partnered with Norwegian Cruise Lines to not only vaccinate their own employees, but we set up testing locations at their ports so that customers could come in and get tested before boarding. So they could still enjoy a vacation in a safe, hopefully safer environment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think that in what I've heard, and it's great because there's so much creativity here, which is there is so much creativity and innovation that we can bring between public and private partnerships, and that's really how we approached everything. And it's not just the pandemic. We've been doing these partnerships with, and I'll talk a lot more about that in a little while, but you have to partner with government, local, state, federal, to bring these programs to be innovative and be creative, to keep people at work and to get them to work. And so I love that. I'm adopting that mantra, Marty, sorry. But we're very proud of that and proud to be part of this. So thank you very much for letting us be here today.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Rachel?
Yes, thank you. Well, in the spirit of talking about getting Americans back to work, I thought we'd bring the voice of the worker into the room. So we're just going to play a 1-minute video of a worker I happen to know.
Everybody knew what my end goal was with Chipotle. It was like, I want to get into HR through Chipotle. Within 3 months, I was able to get kitchen manager, and then I became an apprentice. I was an apprentice there a year and a half, maybe, and then I became the GM. Chipotle has a great culture. They believe in their people. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna go to school, and then hopefully I can get a corporate job. So when I was a GM, I was going to school 2 days a week.
Iris is an example of somebody who wanted the opportunity, was eager, but was also willing to put in the work. When I heard about the opportunity, we immediately thought Iris. She was going to school for the role and she had the personality to go with it. So we just thought it was a perfect fit for her.
I just graduated my BA in Human Resources, and I am a field recruiter for Chipotle. It feels good because I was able to do it. I'm super excited because I got something that I really know I can be really good at.
So that's Iris, and Iris is one of millions of Americans, 88 million we think, who need to go back to school in order to have a chance at a middle-class life. I have the pleasure of working with students like that all the time, and I'll talk about it. But let me start with what we're seeing in our work with 4 million workers across the U.S., and particularly in the pandemic. So what we know is that the future of work is shifting under our feet, and our workers tell us that. We all talk about that in the news all the time, but to get very specific, we're actually seeing that workers are looking for 3 things: pay, purpose, and pathways. Pay, we all know what's happened. We've seen wage growth that has been record, 40-year record over the last 4 quarters. Companies are responding on pay. Purpose, today, American workers, 70% of them define their own purpose as a human through their work. Highest it's ever been. But pathways. Pathways are not being nurtured today in the American workforce at the level they need. Companies have really responded on the other 2, but workers are saying, I want a brighter path for myself, and I want a brighter future for my family. And so when we look at that, career pathways, which really used to be one of the stair steps of the American dream, they've sort of fallen apart. And here's some data on that. 76% of workers today will tell you, I don't have the skills to be employable in the career of the future that I want, or that I even think my company needs of me, 76. But only 26% of them are currently or planning to be in an education or upskilling program. So half of the 88 million Americans we need to reskill are not actively doing it, though they know they need to. So amidst this great resignation, or we call it the great reshuffle at Guild, we know that 48% of workers will change jobs or already have, for the number one reason of going somewhere that will train them and teach them skills. That is now the number one reason people will change jobs, is to go somewhere where they can learn skills, because pay has been lifted and commoditized at some level. So where does that bring you? We need to do what Iris just had the chance to do with Chipotle for millions and millions of Americans. And at Guild, we work with the nation's most innovative companies. We were just chatting about Kohl's, a hometown company, and I'm grateful to have my Governor Polis here, and we work with a lot of great Colorado companies, but broadly, these are organizations like Walmart and Chipotle, JP Morgan, Discover Financial, Hilton, Disney, that have all said, we want to offer pathways and education as a part of our employee value proposition, and we really want that to be something that sits beyond the pay and the purpose that we're delivering on. So how does it work? Chipotle is a great example, because we just saw Iris. With her, what they're doing for her and all 78,000 of her colleagues is that every employee there has the chance to not only go back to school through the 140 universities, learning providers, non-traditional boot camps, you name it, that we've curated together, but they also have a chance to do career planning. Because what workers will tell you today is that they don't feel like they have a career. If you here identify as having one, you're the minority in the US. Most folks feel like I have a series of jobs, and they feel like they're fairly dead end. And so the opportunity to work with a career coach, to have the skills, the pathway, and the planning to know, how do I get from where I am today to where I want to be, and what can I do for my company? Then people always ask, okay, why do companies pay for this? Well, the great news is that for a company like Chipotle, they've found that their employees who are in the learning programs are retaining at 2x rate. So think of the companies that are seeing 50% retention, which is where Chipotle was. They're seeing a 93% retention for Iris and her peers. Better yet, folks like Iris are being promoted within the company at a 7.5x, not percent, 7.5x, so 750% higher rate than her peers in the same store who are not in a learning program. What that means is the fastest path to the middle class right now, I can't empirically prove this, but I can from our data set of 4 million. If you're a worker in America and you want to make it to the middle class, the fastest path right now is to do what she did, to enter a Chipotle as a cashier. She then moved into that, as she mentioned, apprentice role. She was making $60,000 at that point. She moved into the GM role. Those folks clear 6 figures. So that's how we get people into the middle class. So Chipotle sees the return on that. For every dollar they put into their employees' education, they see close to $3 back in the business. And we know that's the case for every organization we work with. So this is something employers can do and can see a positive return. With that, I think I'll wrap it up to say there's also the student debt crisis that this is important towards. Iris didn't pay a dime to go back to school. And in fact, of the 4 million Americans who have access to what we do today, 97% of them have been able to graduate without $1 of student debt, which we're really grateful for, saving over $1 billion in student debt. Thank you. Yeah, $1 billion in the last 7 years since we founded the organization, but there's a lot more to go. And we don't believe anyone should have to navigate this during really uncertain times by themselves. And so we are thinking, and encourage you all in thinking about your states, to really embrace that this worker demographic covers all ranges. You've got age 18 to 78, you've got voters of all persuasions, urban, rural, you name it. The uniting factor is the 88 million Americans who don't have skills today are very fearful of being left behind. And you see that in all the behavior that we're seeing across the US. And so we want to make sure that everybody's uniting in a common desire to get those folks back to work. And we're really excited to make sure that the low-income workforce, as well as the frontline workforce that has carried America on its back for the last 2 years, have a chance not just to survive in the next chapter of their career, but hopefully to thrive. So I'll wrap it up there.
Thanks so much, Rachel, and I love the Iris example. one thing that frustrates me, I came from the private sector, and actually the fast food industry, Cold Stone Creamery was my company, and how many of my friends in the business community, along with elites in academia, talk about dead-end jobs and people that flip burgers. And they don't know Iris's story and what's possible for someone that applies himself inside these organizations. So there's all kinds of different pathways, and I'm excited as well. Now, full disclosure, I am filling in here for Governor Parson. And they gave Governor Bryan and I a program that has 12 questions for 4 people before we get to the governors. And I've done enough of these panels to know that we'll never get to the governors. We'll never get to the 3rd question. So I thought I'd start down with Governor Polis, and let's just go around the horn of governors, hear what's on their mind, and then I'd like to have a discussion around this rather than kind of put everybody on stage solo, so we can talk about the different experiences, different regions, and different views that we bring to solve this issue. Governor Polis?
I think those are just like filler questions if the governors aren't inquisitive enough, but I think with this panel, we're going to be more than inquisitive enough to fill it. I want to acknowledge a former NGA chair is with us, one of my predecessors, Governor Roy Romer. Well, it's on there, Governor Romer. And I kind of wanted to pose a question to Rachel, obviously, and thank you for elevating the voice of the workers. Very exciting. So I guess the question is there something we should be looking at on our state workforces for this kind of partnership? Because we have everybody, people at universities doing maintenance and cleaning. We have folks all over that we want to provide that ladder for. And secondly, are there other public policies that can facilitate this across the private sector? So what can we do as our capacity as large employers to bring our people along in careers, because we employ people across the entire continuum, and how can we better facilitate these partnerships with the private sector?
Love that question. Thank you, Governor. So I think the first thing to think about is, to what Kristen was mentioning, is equity. So most organizations have tuition reimbursement programs. Where you worked probably did, your states probably do, the federal government has one. The problem with the word reimbursement is it means the worker pays up front and they wait for their organization or employer to pay them back at the end of the year. That sounds fine if you are the edge case in this room and you have more than $5,000 in your checking and savings account, but we know the average American has about $400 in their checking and savings account, and that's average. And Iris and her peers sit below that average. So the first thing we have to do is change the system where we don't expect workers to carry the cost of their upskilling up front. Whether that's short-term loans or long-term loans, we have to get rid of that. We obviously are in the business of that because we built a payments platform to do that, but no one had ever built the infrastructure the way other systems like the 401k plans or public methods have ways of funneling those dollars. No one had ever done that in higher education between employers. So the first thing you can do as a governor or a large employer is go look at what is the policy for upskilling your own workforce, and are you requiring your employees to front it? If you are, what you'll find is that your white-collar, white male employees are using it at a disproportionate rate, and all your other populations are most likely not using it at all. So that's the most impactful change that you can make with the stroke of a pen. And then more broadly, I think what we're hoping to see at the state level.
Oh, would you say that one
go
more
ahead.
time? So you said the white male population is using it, others are not, and so how do we change that with the stroke of a pen?
Yeah, I like this. Okay, so white collar, white male populations are the only one who use it at any meaningful rate when they have to front the money. If you change the policy where the employer, or which is the state in this case, pays upfront for the education, but in a streamlined way, nobody can run away with the cash, same way people don't run away with other benefits, then you see equitable employee access, and then you see equitable employee usage of the program.
Okay, now I understand.
So what we did in the Virgin Islands is everybody that graduates from a public high school and from any high school in the Virgin Islands gets a free education at the university, no matter what year you graduated. So we have employees now that work at Government House that are at the university, and their tuition is covered in full as a result of that. It didn't take that much. We figured the amount of money we were spending to lock people up, it was a fraction of a cost to send them to school. So there's no excuse ever not to get a college education.
Governor Evers?
What a group. I just want to start out by just putting Wisconsin in context here. I don't believe the incentives cause disincentives in our state. We have a $2.8 unemployment rate as we speak today, which is the lowest in the history of the state of Wisconsin. So I'm really excited about all sorts of things that have been talked about today, because we do have to look beyond, reduction of incentives from the government. And so we turned it over, frankly, to our regional economic development folks, and they talked about a lot of different things. But my interest and Rachel's got into it as others did, but connecting the dots around having a job in Wisconsin, does rely on childcare, does rely on transit, does rely on getting to work. Frankly, does rely on having the ability to have a pathway. And so those things, yes, we're spending time on some of the other things, like, we put the University of Wisconsin-Madison into our correctional institutions, so people that are coming out of the correctional institutions have some skills that will take them forward. But to me, it is around connecting the dots. And so my question isn't for anybody in particular, but how do we continue to do that in a way that creates a workforce that will be happy and productive and able to contain their lives in a way that they have a good family and can be good fathers and mothers. Simple as that.
I'll jump in there to say that in the Workforce Innovation Network and throughout a lot of the innovations we're talking about now, over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of really interesting models of braided funding. We provide philanthropic funding, employers provide other sources of funding, but there are many pockets of funding and many flexible ways in which to use WIOA, SNAP ENT. There are really interesting models out there. I like to use the anecdote when I worked for the mayor of New York. We had, in New York City alone, not the state, not when I worked for the governor, in the city alone, we had a $500 million workforce budget. The funds are there. I think what we aim to do with the Workforce Innovation Network is think about all of those services, wraparound services, required for any worker or learner to succeed. How do we leverage all types of funding, bring employers to the table, bring philanthropy to the table, and bring policymakers to the table to make sure that we have, one, a unified goal, and two, all the supports and services needed to do that. And I think if I were to say one thing you can do in the next month for staffers, governors alike, if you could just raise your hand, how many people here have been to a workforce center in their state? Oh, I love that. And how many of you have been to or seen a training provided by the state? Fabulous. I think knowing and understanding even what it means to show up at a workforce center, how many times you have to show up, with what paperwork, in what systems, how to navigate these centers. Mardy talks about this a lot. It is so cumbersome before you even get to training. And I think, the ways in which I've seen this work really well is having, as Rachel's done, employers at the table saying, this is my pipeline, this is what I need. Here are the jobs, here are the skills, here are the pathways that I will take going into these, and here are the pathways I'm going to help you create going into these jobs. With employers at the table and all those stakeholders at the table, creating a unified vision, you can get around many of the barriers in the workforce system that have been holding people back. And I'll just give you one example, if I may take a tangent on all things tech, since we've been talking about computer science education and technology this morning. As many of you know, in order to be registered to provide training or education in your state, you must register on what's called an ETPL, the state's eligible training provider list. In many states, it takes 2 to 3 years to be on that list. In many states, every time you change your curriculum, you must submit it to the state, and sometimes you can wait 1 year to be approved to teach that. In New York, we had one body, one person, approving a dog grooming curriculum and a software engineering curriculum. Took over a year. We have to change those types of barriers if we're going to get people into the jobs that we know, we heard this morning and we hear from employers, are changing quarterly. The requirements for those jobs are changing quarterly. And quite frankly, there's no certification or credential that we can train to that provides an adequate baseline. And I think we need to be really honest about what we're telling workers as they come through our doors. We can put you in this job, just take this 6 months without pay, not feeding your families and will get you into a great job with economic mobility. We need to be very clear about what those pathways are, and we need to be very committed to having employers at the table and delivering on those in partnership with states. It can't happen any other way.
Governor Gianforte.
Before you go, I just wanted to ask you a question because I want to have a real conversation. Working as a labor commissioner in the trenches and seeing how what programs work, and also working as an eligible training provider, the most effective programs need babysitters. The reality is murder is a training statistic, unfortunately. What have you used in order to keep people motivated, keep them coming to class, getting them to show up in just managing their lives? I mean, because that is what gets them most of the time.
I'll give one example, but Marty's truly in the trenches too. I funded a program to train software engineers, individuals who did not have a four-year degree, and I braided WIOA funds with philanthropic funds so that I could provide wraparound services. Childcare, I paid for Metro cards, meaning transportation there and back every single day. We provided all the meals for the entirety of that. And I think a lot of people now are looking at how you can use WIOA to do that. What other funds can you provide for childcare? We also employed a full-time social worker who was on site as a caseworker for every single individual, making sure if they did not show up, what was happening at home. And the stories we all know, we've seen and heard them. It is hard. But it took that one-to-one, the coaching, the mentorship, the caseworkers, all of that were part of the solution. And of that cohort, many of those cohorts we funded, those individuals without a four-year degree, we had one individual who was working as a truck driver, $10 an hour, was given $125,000 entry-level salary as a software engineer. $125,000 entry level. That's what is possible here, but we have to figure out how to do that. Mardy. Sorry.
Thank you. We have 9 minutes left, and I want every governor to get the chance to ask a question and everybody get a chance to answer, but we've got a time budget of 9 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Governor. First, I want to thank the panelists for your work. There's nothing more important than closing this skills gap to get people into good jobs. And Leanne, I want to give a thank you for your help through the pandemic. You've been a great partner. I have one objective today. I want to give a shout out to Cognizant because tell the story briefly, because it's a great example of a public, the state of Montana, private, Cognizant in building an employer-specific workforce pipeline. Cognizant had a relatively small footprint in Montana, call it 100 employees, something on that order, and they had a big, hairy, audacious goal to hire 1,500 people, which would make them one of the largest employers in our state. We brought university resources to the table. We built, with their input and funding, we built a employer-specific curriculum that was 8 hours a day for 12 weeks. They called in October. We gave them their first graduate in March. We've now run 6 cohorts of 35 students each. Cognizant has essentially hired 100% of the graduates at a great pay. And now we're extending this into our tribal communities because the curriculum can be developed remotely. And we've taken that model and we're now building in the state of Montana employer-specific workforce pipelines based on their requirements. I think it's a model of how public-private partnerships can be done, and I just appreciate your partnership.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Kelly?
Thank you. I was listening to Governor Evers and just thinking, ditto. Yeah. We have implemented a number of, I think, innovative approaches to developing our workforce and really wed our private sector and our education community at all levels, from high school through our career and tech ed and through our higher education. But every time we turn around, the real issue is childcare. We can train everybody up and we can get them ready to go, but there just aren't enough ways to secure that kind of workforce. And it was interesting to hear you talk about pathways because I've thought that for a long time. We were working with our children's cabinet to try to develop that pathway so that becomes a profession, with expectations of higher qualifications to get in, but then certainly a pathway to grow. And so I'm very interested in working with anybody who's got some good ideas about how we can make that happen, because everything else we do will be for naught if we don't take care of that really critical issue.
Thank you, Governor Kelly. And even though I'm the governor of Arizona, I grew up in Ohio. My brother still lives in Cincinnati, so I'd like to wish you well tomorrow, but I cannot.
I don't need your good wishes.
Governor Wolf?
Yeah, one of the virtues of going last is that I can say ditto to what Tony said and what Laura said. I think in Pennsylvania, of course, Pennsylvania is one of we're actually the biggest employer in South Central Pennsylvania. And we have the same struggles that private sector employers have in bringing people back to work. And childcare is the whole continuum is important. We need to get people to work. We need to have them healthy. We need to make sure that they have adequate food. But childcare is what I think we have to worry about. And I think we really need to change the model that we're working on. And that's what we've done in Pennsylvania, working with our own workforce to change the model to say we cannot count on folks making $11 an hour, which is what they were making in Pennsylvania, to actually fulfill the need that families have to get people. So if we want to get away from white-collar white guys taking advantage of all the things that are available and want to really broaden that, we've got to do more in the area of child care.
Thank you, Governor Wolf. Any closing comments, Governor Bryan?
I know it's been a great session. I think we have wonderful panelists. Thank you, governors, for joining us. I want to maximize any time we have. That's it for closing remarks for me.
Well, I just want to say I want to thank our panel. I learned a lot today, and that's, I think, the best thing about this job is you learn something new every day. I do think we're in a very special time right now in our country. We've been through a very difficult time, but when you talk about some of these unemployment rates that we're seeing, we've never seen rates this low in our lifetime, and yet we have millions of people still sitting on the sidelines. And I know the intentions are pure across the political spectrum on how to do this, how to work with the private sector, how to partner with education. I think we have a real opportunity, and the way the jobs of the future and technology is changing so much. So it's a discussion I can guarantee you we'll never check the box on this one and move on to another problem. We'll always be working on getting Americans employed and raising their income. So I thank everybody. Thanks for your participation, and let's have a good rest of the day.